Hi, I'm Doug from Dynamic Computing, and welcome to a very special edition of 10 Minute Amiga Retrocast. As you can tell, the video quality is different than it normally is, and that's because we're recording in the absolute phenomenal video quality of 480i. Now, what we're going to be doing today is experimenting with the Genlocking capabilities of the Amiga. Now, I'm doing this as a series with a couple of different videos that will dig deeper and deeper into Genlocking. If the series is successful, I'll continue on. If it's a dud, then I won't. Basically what we're doing is I'm recording everything right in OBS Studio on my PC. That is being handled this way. The video is coming through on the R800 Canon. This is an R400, but they're virtually identical. The R800 is just a little newer version. I have composite video and composite audio coming out of the Canon camera and going directly into the Amiga. Let me give you an idea how that works. This is my absolutely loverly Amiga 500. I bought this a couple of years ago from a nice gentleman here in Arizona. It had belonged to his father, and his father passed away. I've done a video on it, and the video link should be right up there. Now, this is an Amiga 500 with a Rev 5 motherboard, which are stable motherboards, but not the best ones. They're fine. There's nothing wrong with them, and they could be made to do anything that you want to do. Now, let's take a look at what I've got set up on here. First off, you'll notice that my A570 CD-ROM drive is attached to this. Now, there's a couple reasons for it. Number one, it's cool to have access to CDs on your Amiga 500. So if I want to grab things like clip art for doing video work with, or big packs of fonts, or the AmiNet collections, anything like that, I can use the A570 to pull the data in. You'll also notice this is working on Workbench 1.3. I still have the Genlock up and running here and functioning normally. And if I disconnect the video camera, bloom, oh, that looks terrible. There it is. You can see that it actually, the Genlock actually just outputs a color signal directly from the Amiga without the Genlock capabilities. Let's plug the camera back in. Hope it doesn't explode. Looks good. Okay. So inside the A570, I have 2 megabytes of expansion RAM over here, and I've done a video on this before, and I have a SCSI controller built into this where I'm using a SCSI to SD to allow this little guy to boot. Now, there's also a video that I've done all about that, which will be linked again right up there, and I'll also try to remember to link them to the description. Let's take a look what's inside this nice little machine right here. Now in here, I'm using the standard 68,000 CPU. There's a couple reasons for that. Number one, when you use the A570 without special ROMs installed in it, it doesn't really work with an accelerator. So I've just got a standard 68,000 CPU, and that's going to go along with the theme that I'm going to tell you about. Now over here, I have LinuxJedi's 2 megabyte RAMSSES board plugged in here that gives me 2 megabytes of chip RAM. Now, something like this was available back in around 91. The Mega chip did exactly the same thing. As a matter of fact, the 8375 Agnes that I am using in here came right out of my Mega chip. Basically, they work the same. This is just a little slicker. I've also got the Amigakit DF0 and DF1 switcher right here that allows you to switch between DF0 and DF1 as your primary drives by just resetting the Amiga and holding the reset keys down, and you'll see a link to that video right up there. I'm linking to a lot of videos. And last but not least, I have an RGB to HDMI plugged in here. Now, funny story about this, I'll tell you real quick. I tried to set this up the other day. I put in my RGB to HDMI with my brand new Pi Zero that I ordered in, well, it's been 6 months now. Turned it on, and I noticed I wasn't getting a video signal. I'm like, oh, that's strange. I've used these all the time. All of a sudden, literal smoke starts pouring out of my screen, or out of my Amiga, just clouds of smoke pouring up. And I'm thinking, okay, Doug, you've just absolutely destroyed your Amiga, or you've destroyed your Pi, or you've destroyed your Denise, maybe plugged it into the wrong socket the wrong way, or have something backwards. So I immediately pulled everything out and I started using a different solution for displaying my video. Then I thought, you know what, let me test and see if anything's bad. Number one, the Denise was fine. I'd plugged it back in and it was working fine. I plugged in the Raspberry Pi and it booted up fine. Literally, the Raspberry Pi just separately, just connected to nothing except power. I plugged my cable, my HDMI cable, back in to get a display so I could see what the Raspberry Pi was displaying. Same smoke in my hand coming up from like where the Raspberry Pi is. I look down and it's my flippin' mini HDMI to HDMI cable back a little ways, and I'll show a picture of it right here, was burning internally. The cable was bad. The cable was burning and causing all this smoke. So I think a couple pins got crossed in there and it just started frying. Oh, but the Pi was fine. The RGB to HDMI was fine. So I plugged it all back in. This is a temporary solution here. I have a thinner cable. I had to jury rig this in because my normal cable burned up. But I've got a thinner cable that I'm going to be able to run around and send out the back of the Amiga, but this works for now. For my Genlock, I'm using a Progressive Peripherals, which was an awesome hardware company back in the day. Progressive Peripherals ProGen. Now this Genlock is virtually 100% identical to the RockGen 8802 that was I think a company was called Protec in Europe was making the PAL version of this. This is the NTSC version. I own the PAL version. It looks exactly the flippin' same as this. I mean, to a T. It just has PAL chips in it. This is actually a pretty good Genlock. I have ordered in and I own several Amiga Genlocks. The only ones that are any good are the ones on my Amiga 1000, the Commodore one, and this one, like my mini gens and things like that. They are absolutely horrible. The video quality is horrible. And I haven't determined if it's because the Genlocks stink, which I think it is, or they're just 35 years old and they're showing their age. The reason that I have this open and don't have the lid on it is because I'm constantly making minor adjustments to these little pots here to get the best video signal possible. And every time I put the lid on, I think, oh, let me do one more adjustment. So I just have the lid off. You have inputs and outputs up here. That's the video input. That's the video output. These are both BNC connectors right here. And over here you have an actual Amiga RGB port, but it does not pass signals through the way you'd expect. This literally only works with like a 1084 monitor. If you try to plug another device into it that would normally plug into the RGB port, they don't work. It only passes some of the signals through. Now, this also has an adapter on it that plugs into the serial port on here that will allow you to adjust how the thing genlocks through the Amiga. So basically you can use some Amiga software and tell it to, you know, genlock like this, where you have the Amiga display here and you have your video here. You can tell it just do the Amiga display, just do the camera. You can control that through all that through software. I've been unable to find the software anyplace. I've looked everywhere. There's one reference for it on archive.org. I downloaded it. All it is a Workbench 1.3 disc with nothing else on it, just generic 1.3 disc. So if any of you know of the software for either the RockGen 8802 or the Progressive Peripherals Genlock, let me know. I'd love to get an ADF copy of it. So really, why would we use a Genlock on the Amiga in the 80s and 90s? Well, we were taking videos on big old honking big VHS camcorders that we'd sling over our shoulders and weighed about 10, 12 pounds. And we wanted to add cool things, you know, happy birthday, trip to the Grand Canyon, all that cool stuff to our consumer level videos. Now, these Genlocks were also used in some professional videos. You know, wedding videographers were pretty new at the time. They were putting silhouettes around the videos and our wedding and the date and things like that. And, you know, 5-6 years later, they'd have our divorce videos for people. They'd bundle the packages together. But the Amiga was especially useful for this. And I'm going to be talking in United States terms because, you know, we're awesome and all. But because the NTSC video signal that America used was so darn similar to the video signal produced by the Amiga. And this was intentional back in the day, so things like this could be easily integrated. This made it so Genlocks were very easy and very inexpensive to create for the Amiga, and people were able to do this at home. Now, generally, you'd have a camcorder where you'd have the initial video in. You'd have an Amiga hooked up with your Genlock, just like I showed you, and then you would have your regular VHS player you're recording onto. So you dump the recording onto the VHS player with the Amiga Genlocked graphics and text and things like that in the background, just like you see right here. Now, you do this for weddings and anniversaries and things like that, but you can also use it for other things too. You can use it for making a video for training people, things like that. A nice training video where you have text come up on the screen, and we'll be getting into that later on in the episodes. So let's get into some of the ways that we can use titling packages to accomplish what we want to accomplish here. That, by the way, is the actual answer. So what we're going to be looking at today is TV text from Zuma. Now, Zuma made a ton of fonts. You may have Zuma fonts on your Amiga. They made a ton of other software. But the TV text software and its companion TV show, which we'll be getting into in another episode. This is cool. It's a scripting language. These could do some really, really fantastic things in the late 80s and early 90s as far as text and video overlays and creating backgrounds and things like that. So we're going to take a quick look at it today and probably dive deeper into this in another episode. So while we're looking at this, let's have a nice view of the Amiga 500 so you can see I'm actually using the Amiga 500 to do this live in front of a live studio audience here. The program that we're using is TV Text Pro right here, and this works on any Amiga with at least 1 mega RAM. I've also used this on my Amiga 1000, which of course has 512 of chip and then lots more fast RAM. Works fine on there. More RAM, the better. Here you can choose what kind of screen you want to use. Low res, interlace, high res interlace. When you're doing video work and genlocking on an Amiga, you always want to use interlace mode because TV signals are interlaced. And so a lot of your sources are going to really, really, really want to use it. And of course you can choose your overscan levels. I use medium overscan on these. It's just easier to use with how I have it set up. And then how many colors you want to work with right here. Now you can only use 32 and 64 colors in low res, but low res actually looks pretty good. So we're going to go into high res mode, and you see it launches the program. Now the background color is color 0. When you're genlocking, color 0 is your transparent color. It's like the first color in your palette, and it's always going to be transparent. If you load up DeluxePaint, the black screen in the background is going to be color 0. Now in reality, this is how it looks. That's going through my RGB to HDMI, and you can see that's my live display, and it's actually coming up as a kind of a cyan color screen. How this works is the first thing you want to do is choose what font you want to use for your titles. So we go into text and we go into fonts. Now I've been using the the Swift font, which actually looks pretty good, but there's lots of others. Like, let's play with Barn font here. And then you choose your font size. We'll make a big old title, and we'll do a 70-point font. Now, up at the top of the screen, what's going to happen here, nothing's going to change, but we've just told the Amiga what font to use. Now, we go up to the menus, we choose Render, we choose Text, and here's where we type in what we want to say. We want to say, Amiga is nifty. All right? Now, by default, it's going to use its built-in kind of 3D font generation, which we're going to look at here in a second. You can hit the View button here, and it's going to generate the font and give you exactly what it's going to look like. Amiga is nifty. And see, it's got white letters. It kind of anti-aliases them. It puts this neat drop shadow down here. And once we click Render, now it puts the font on the screen, but not where we want it. We move the mouse. If it shows a garbage can, if we click the right mouse button, it immediately deletes that text. If you see the push pin, that means you can click and you can drag it around the screen with the mouse, or you can move it around the screen. I'm using the cursor keys here, and see it's moving the Amiga is nifty up and down. We're going to put it right there. When you're done, click the right mouse button, it pastes it down, and it's ready to enter more text. But in this case, we're just got our Amiga is nifty up on the screen here. Now, if you're actually doing this in production, you don't want the little Amiga mouse right there. You don't want the title. So you hit right Amiga period, and that gets rid of the mouse. Right Amiga minus, that gets rid of the title screen. And then the mouse came back. There it is. If you move the mouse, click a mouse button, the mouse will come back. Let's bring these back here. Now, if you don't like the layout here, you can cut and paste and move things. So I'm going to hit Amiga, right Amiga X, and that's going to bring up a little marquee. We highlight this with the marquee. Now we've cut that, and now we can move is nifty any place that we want to. We'll put it right under there, and we'll pin it down. Now we've got Amiga is nifty in the middle of the screen. That's great, but what if we want things to look a little bit differently? Right click, Render Prefs. This is going to give you an idea what each of these preferences, you hit F1, you hit F2, you hit F3, is going to make the fonts look like. Pink, red, cyan, yellow, cool edges. Here's some dithering here, brushed gold. Here's glow. So those first 10 on here are assigned to these function keys. You have more rendering preferences down below. Anti-aliased, black and gold glint, black and gold sheen, different kinds of casting. You can assign these, if you use them a lot, to your function keys, or you can use them as you want to. So let's say we want Edge 5. We're going to click Edge 5. We're going to use it. That means next time I render some text, we're going to put PCs are ick. Now, when I hit View, it should pre-generate that and view that as that new render option that I chose. Now I'll render it. PCs are ick. All right, we'll paste that down. Now we can change, look on the screen here in the center. White, I'm hitting my function keys, purple, red, cyan, and this one I think is kind of a cool one here. It's crazy. When you hit the function keys, when you're in here, it changes what rendering you're going to do. So let's do C64. Look at that. Is spiffy. All right. So now I don't have to hit view, but I can. I can just render it, but I can get an idea of what it's going to look like if I hit view here, make sure I like it. C64 is spiffy. Yay! Now we're going to move that down here. See how easy that is? Pin that down. Cancel out of that. And now we have our first titles right here. Okay? These can all be saved as standard graphic screens that can be then imported right into something like DeluxePaint or any other program you want to use to put together a presentation. And of course, just like anything else, save screen will save the entire screen. So here it'll save it as a 16 color image, and we're going to call this Tenmark EP174.pic. This is just a standard IFF file that we can now use in any way that we want to. Saves it right on the hard drive. We can clear the screen, flood the screen with color 0. You can also flood the screen with any color you want to. You can adjust the palette. I'm sure some of you are wondering if you can. Absolutely. It comes with its own palette here. There's the gold stuff. But you can adjust the palette any way you want to, save it, do anything you want to with the palette. It gives you some nice features with that. But let's create, we don't really want to fill the screen, but let's create some other cool things. Now we want to do something kind of cool and fancy here. First thing I'm going to do is go to Screen, and I'm going to click Lock the Background. What this means is that nothing in the background will change. You can put text over it, you can do this and that. If you have like a graphic on here, it would lock it and your text will go right over it. And we're going to see why in just a second. Now we're going to create a little bit of text. Oops, I didn't want to do that. Let's go to render text. Hello, my friends. We'll render that out. Now what this is going to do, this is a nice piece of text here that we're going to just paste down. And we want to have a little fun with that. We want to put a nice dithered box with the text above here. But if you just create a dithered box, it's going to overwrite the text. So what we do is we tell it stencil. And it's going to remember not to overwrite this in theory. We're going to change our dithering. Let's see, let's do that dithering right there. We're going to render a shape, and we're going to render a box. And in theory, I'm going to put this box right around here, and let's see what happens. Dither, 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 dither. This is only a 68,000 CPU. If I had a 68030, it'd be doing it about 10 times as fast. Okay, now we have this strange dithered box that I don't really like the pattern of. I move the box over here, and in theory, the text should appear right on top of it. Isn't that cool? So it does not overwrite that text because the text was a stencil. I've chosen screen, I've chosen stencil. Now we have an actual box. Now we can cut this. So right Amiga X. We cut this out, but doink. And because the background is also a stencil, it's not going to pick up any of the blue background, and I can move this any place I want to. I could have done better on that darn text box there, but you get the idea. Paste it down. Now we have hello my friends. Now here's another cool thing. See that right there? Hello my friends. We can click save object, select it, and guess what it's going to do? it's going to save it as a literal brush that you can then open up in something like DeluxePaint. So let's save it. We're going to call this hello. We can call it anything we want, but we'll do BRS. We're going to launch good old DeluxePaint 4 here. Let's get in here. And just for laughs, we'll load it in with no overscan. Whoops, I did the wrong size. Meant to do interlace. There we go. Now let's see if we can load in our new brush. We have that under RDH1, and then desktop video, TVT Pro, Pix, and it should be, that's the one I just created, hello.obj. And look at this. Okay, so notice that the colors are all off because the standard DeluxePaint palette here is different than the standard palette from our TV text program. So we go up here to color and we do palette, use brush palette. Redoes the brush palette. Now we have our text here, still works fine with the Genlock, and we can do anything we want to with this, including make a little animation. And let me show you what I did just for you guys. Now come on guys, I just report the news to you. I don't create the news, okay? You can't blame me for this. Would I do something like this? Nay, not me. You knew I had to get a dig in there somewhere, didn't you? All right, we'll paste that down. So that is very briefly some cool things you can do with a Genlock, with text, everything like that. You can also do that with, you can bring in graphics into the programs, everything like that. Whatever you want to use to display this stuff, you can use. I think it's pretty cool. Now I'm sure that you'll find many really mature and adult things that you can do with the Genlock that really take advantage of what the Amiga can do. I'm really interested in hearing what you guys think about the Amiga Genlocks and how you would like to use them yourself. So please like and subscribe, comment below, tell me what you do with your Amiga Genlocks back in the day. Let me know if you want to continue this series. But until next time, this is Doug from 10 Minute Amiga Retrocast signing out.